So I'm sure some people out there who might be dealing with chronic pain who have a really thick story of, well, I had this thing
Mhm.
happen and now I just have this ache right here. They're hearing the benefits of having a strong therapeutic relationship, but it still doesn't like fit into their experience of their pain because so much of it is based on this idea that the tissue is injured. So how
Mhm.
exactly does that function? I guess either on like a neurological level or in a muscle tissue. How does having a strong therapeutic relationship actually enact change?
Oh, it's an excellent question. I want to get back to that tissue-based concept of things just in a little bit. So let's make a note about that. But the way I incorporate the therapeutic relationship is via shared decision making in my work. Shared decision making model, the model contrasts markedly with the expert clinician as expert model that most healthcare is performed from, and most of us were trained from. Right? I mean, we go to school, whatever school that is, to learn more. We take continuing education to further our training. We get experience, which gives us more experience. And essentially, we're sort of working our way up that ladder to becoming an expert. And you know, I could sort of verse myself as a myofascial release expert for many years, where in the beginning, I didn't know much about it, but after a long time, I began to learn more about it, and people looked at me as that expert. And they come into us seeking an expert for our help because nobody else has been able to help them. Um, but it took a long time for me to come to this realization that no matter how much I know, I don't know what you're feeling until I include you in the conversation. I don't know what you're fearing and hoping for. I don't know what kind of pressures you like, what you think is useful, what you think is harmful, what you fear from me and with me until I elevate your worth in the relationship. So we're basically taking a somewhat equal role. And shared decision making is slowly making inroads in the manual therapy world, and it's made a lot more of a being more accepted in the general medical community. Shared decision making is empowering a patient that they have a stake in their own care. Shared decision making is so much more than asking them, well, how's the pressure, right? It's so much more than that. It's me, if I'm going to use my myofascial release background, and I don't call it MFR anymore, just because I kind of evolved from that, and I just call it manual therapy. If I'm going to do something with someone for neck pain, right? We're so used to doing things that we say, okay, I palpated your problem. I put it in my little computer and said, I know what the problem is, or I think I know what the problem is. And based on a lot of experience and training, I think I know what to do with it. Instead of that, what I might do is I can't sponge all that stuff from my brain of what I think I'm palpating and what I've done for years with that problem. But what I do is there's a demarcation point from where I used to act by saying, Brett, here's what we should do. We should do this in this direction. What I'll do is I'll take my hand and I'll do what I might have done for years. And then I'll say, okay, Brett, what do you feel right now? And when I ask a question like that, it's intended to get into your lived experience, past and present. And when I do this right now, for instance, does it feel like I'm connecting with that neck pain? If so, does it feel like the pressure, the direction of stretch, the style of intervention that I'm using, does it feel like we are doing something that could be beneficial for you? Now, if even you said you just got out of school 3 years ago, even in that short period of time, you know that there's people who immediately like what you do, or there's people who immediately have no clue if what you're doing will be helpful at all. And so it's not easy. Shared decision making requires a lot of work on our part to elevate a person's, our patient's, another human sense of self-worth, to let them know that they can contribute and they actually have value in the relationship. And that's how I view therapeutic relationship, as being an important aspect of what you and I do. And it really does, it forces me to step down, to let my ego become a bit more in check and elevate the patient's worth so we're about an equal level. And it's so unusual in the manual therapy and massage professions because people will say, well, I don't know what to do. That's why I came to you. And
Yeah.
it's a lot of work, but I think it's really worthwhile work.
Yeah. My immediate sense of that is that it really helps kind of create a bridge into the rest of their life so they have a sense of
Yeah.
ownership on how they respond to their experience, and they can actually build their own language around what they're experiencing and actually navigate that in a way. It feels, like you said, like a lot more empowering than the traditional model where we kind of keep them behind closed doors of what we're doing, and we do something and then just assume it'll work or not work, and they just don't really have any way to orient. It feels a lot more engaging, and
Yeah,
like it leads a little bit more to like lifestyle medicine too. Like I feel like it would open the door to really equip them with the responsibility to own
yeah.
their embodiment.
It also would take it, you're exactly right. It also requires me to take more responsibility for my actions in the environment. So let me just sort of veer off into the physical therapy profession for just a moment. Most physical therapy these days are more exercise based. And one of the richest part of the physical therapy narrative is the homework, right? Because I'm only seeing you an hour once a week, so therefore you have to do a lot of work in that intermediary time, and in a lot of ways that comes into manual therapy narratives as well, where we only see them 1 hour a week. You need to be doing your homework. You need to be doing self care, self stretching, exercise, all these things. And most patients have that sense of expectation that, okay, what are you going to give me so I can do this work on my own? But I think that I see too often clinicians deflecting. They deflect away that if a patient doesn't improve, they'll often lean on, well, they were non-compliant with their homework, right? They didn't do the exercises, they didn't do their stretches, they didn't do their whatever self-care we assign to them, or they didn't do enough of it. And while all of those things can be beneficial, I'm not going to take away from anything like that. And a lot of times that homework is good for changing patterns, changing memories, all those things. The one thing I try and do is within the context of the setting, the therapeutic setting itself, I'm looking to elicit change. The two of us, can we begin to formulate the beginnings of change so that you can see yourself as capable of change, that empowerment during a session to say, you know what, I feel different right now. And to me, that's the most pivotal thing right there. What creates lasting change? It's a question people are always asking all the time. And if you go down the silos or the rabbit holes, everybody's got a different story. Lasting change isn't accomplished until we balance their pelvis, until we get their feet level, until we put C1 back in place, until we break up that trigger point, hundreds of things, right? Change, it doesn't last until tissue changes the way I think it should change. I also think change may not last until a person can begin to have a better picture of themselves as changeable. And one of the ways I see that is when they get up off my table or from my chair, however we're working, if they begin to feel, sort of an embodied change within themselves, I think that's a huge starting place for change. Instead of making it predicated on, you have to do this 15 times a day, Brett, or else change isn't going to happen. And my homework is often, Brett, you feel different right now, right? Can you picture yourself moving out of here and being different, right? And people will say to me, well, you want me to think positive thoughts? That's my homework. And in a way, without minimizing that, that's a big part of it, because anybody in chronic pain, I think they really struggle to see themselves as changing, especially, being opening so many doors for so many years from all these different people and all these different promises and a lot of money, right? And it's not helped. They really struggle to see themselves as feeling and being different. And I think that's some of the hardest stuff to get through to them. It's not about the repetition as much as it is to changing these patterns up here.